Hi and welcome to the next video of the series. This is video 7 and we will handle reactive forms with Angular and there especially the login and the register forms. So the structure is as always, we will have a look at the video outcome, then we write a user story for it and then we will implement it. And at the end we will have a look at what is coming in video 8, which will be custom validators for reactive forms. So let's see what we are building. So we have here a register page. And you see it's all reactive, so it's always checking if all the properties are there. So we can go, our full name is Felix, our username is, let's say, Felix3, our mail is felix@felix3.de, and we have a password. And now we register, and then so with this we are going against our backend. And now I just console logged it out, so we can use this here, and we can log in. And now you can see that we are having in our local storage a new token for our user. So now we have our two forms that are completely reactive and that are always validating the input. Hi, as always, we first have a short look at what we are building in this video. So here we have video 7 and we want to build a login and register with reactive forms. So we want that our login and register page are set up with reactive forms so the user can get an instant feedback. And the acceptance criteria are we want to use Angular material and reactive forms, and we want to do both the register and the login component with it. So we can keep this in doing. And as you can see, the next videos are about custom validators and also the login and register with Angular X Store. So this will be coming in the next days or this year in 2 days. So let's start our feature branch and we use again git-flow for this. So we can go git-flow feature start and we are in video 7. So let's have a short look at reactive forms in Angular. In Angular you're having two ways to work with forms, so template driven and reactive forms. We're using the latter one, and with reactive forms we can build our own representation of this form in our component. So we have some features or some benefits. We can use custom validators, what we will do in the next video. We can change validation and we can adding form fields dynamically. So you can see here, you can import all of this from Angular forms to use. And then we have here V-HTML. So we have a form where we can bind it to our form group in our component. So this is in our component, our form group. And we make our entry submit. So if we hit this button with type submit, we will execute this method. And then we have here our inputs, and the form control name is that name belongs to our my form. And then we can go into our component. Here you can see we have my form, so this what we had here. And then all the properties, so email, name, message, and then it's a new form control, so that Angular is looking out for this. And then you can also add validators like here, and there are some validators that are there from Angular, for example required, so there must be specified something and the user has to type in something. And then you can also use validation patterns, so you can check if there's number or whatever, or a min length, max length, so you can even build your own custom validators. So we do this in the next video. So you have here a complete form in V-HTML. So we have, as before, our form group, my form, and our input with a placeholder. And then for name, we can get the property from the form. And if there is an error on required, so if this is true, then we display, oops, please provide a name. And if you type something in, then this will disappear because this is no longer true. So this was a shorthand. So now we can go to our code. So now we are in our code, and the first thing that we can do is we can go to our app module and we have to import some stuff. So we need our forms module from Angular. We need the reactive forms module, and then we can go with something from Angular material, for example Angular material form. And there we have, or what do we need? We need a form field copy it. A form field module. We also need met input module, so we can validate these fields. And we will need the met button module, because we want to have a nice looking login and register button. So we import this from Angular material. And there from button. And now we are ready to start. So the first page we can do is our login page, or our login component. And first we can go into our controller. And we have to initialize a form. So we go with login form and say it's a form group. And then we will need for this our out service, so we can go against our backend. And this should be from authenticationService. And then we also have our router, so we can route the user, if the login was successful, to the next component or the next page. So then our ng on init, we can init our form, so we go this login form and make a new form group. And then we have multiple ways to do this. So we will do this here in one way and in the Register.Component in the other way, so you have seen both of them. So first we can go here for a new form control. And here we say the initialize value will be null. And we can add some validators from Angular. And for this we need this brackets. And we can go for validators.required. We can go, or we can even check if it is in valid email format. And we can go for example min length and say, let's say min length is 6. So here we have our email, and then we can go for another property, let's say it's the password. And here we have again our form control. And we can new form control, my mistake, with null. Wait, null and validators dot required, and we can again go for min length, for example 3, because this should password should obviously be longer. So let's check if everything looks right. So we have our form group, we have our properties, email and password with form controls. And then we need a method for onSubmit for our form, like we saw before. So we go for onSubmit. And then you can get some properties on your form, and you can just say this login form. And then there are properties like valid, invalid. And so we go for, if invalid is true, we just return. So nothing will get executed. And then we can go against our out service and say login. And then we can just not use value of our form, because the properties are named email and password as they should be, or as they are named in our backend and in our service. So we can work with this, and then we can just map, and what we are getting in return is we get a token. But we can just go with this router.navigate, and we can navigate to our admin page. so after login. And since this here is an observable, we can just subscribe to it. So this get executed. So let's have a quick look at our service. Here we need to add a login form. So we can just go with export interface and we make a login form out of it. Because we just need two properties here, and these are the email string, and we need them always, so we don't need the save operator or something like this. So this would be a save operator, but we don't need this here. And then we have our password, so nothing more needed. So we have here our login form, and then we can go for email loginform.email and password loginform.password. So now we can switch to our HTML and our login component. So what we say we want at first, we want to know where are we. So we can say we are on our login page. And we can move this a little bit. So in the first line. And here we can say, for example, our style is text align center. So it's always centered. And then we have here a little bit too much spaces. So we are on login page. And then we can go for form. And here we want to bind this to our form group with Angular. And we say here we are in our login form. And then we can make an ng-submit. And say we want to execute our onSubmit method. Inside our form we can go for a div. So we structure it a bit, and we can say we make class container. And we can just add this to our SCSS, or this is just plain CSS normally. And we can go for flexbox. Display flex. We can go with flex direction as a column and not as a row. So it's get. And then we have align items. Center. So this is just a very basic way to center everything in it. So we can see this later. This then looks a little bit better. And our direction is also a column. Well, we don't need this two times. And then we can go with our container again. And we will just say with 40%. This should be enough on the page. So now we can go back to our HTML. And here the first thing that we want to do is we want to have a met form field. So we can make some inputs. So we can do an input here. And we say this is from type met input, so Angular material. We have a placeholder, which will be email. And we have a form control name. This will also be email, so our property from our login form. And then we can go with met hint and make a hint if there are errors on our form. And there are two ways that we can go to this. So we can make an ng-if, and we can say loginform.controls, then we get our property, email. And if there are any errors on it, we want to display email is required, for example. And we can just copy this and use this for our password property. So we say the placeholder is the password and our form control name. So which is connected to our form login form here. So our password and our email. And then we can just go for password.errors, and then we say password is required. And then we can go and make our button. And here we can have a short look at Angular material. We are on the page. So we can just look where are the buttons. And I would like to go with the flat button, for example. So we just use this attribute. And we can go with the color as the primary color from our Angular material theme. And then we can bind it to disabled and say this is disabled if our login form is not valid or invalid. And the type is obviously submit, and we can give it a name, login. So what we have here now, we have our form, we have our ng-submit, our container, our email, our password property. So if there's nothing typed from the user, then we will display password is required and email is required, and then he can submit the form. So I think this should be everything, so we can try to start it. So first we have to run our API with npm run start dev. And in our second terminal we can go into our front end and can say ng-serve. And let's look if everything is starting correctly. So now our backend is starting, and you can see everything is fine. And we can launch Postman in the meantime while our front end is compiling, and get our values for the login. So we can check this. Yeah, so here we can. So here we have our user or our email, and we can just go with this. And you see it's now compiled everything. So this looks quite good. And we can go to our local host, to our login page. And here you see, so I will open the console so we see if there are any errors. This looks fine. So you see an email is required. So if I just type in this will always be there because it's validating if it's, for example, an email. You see now it's gone. So we take this and password also if we are shorter than this. So yeah, now you see we forgot the type password so that our characters are not being displayed. So we can say here the type is from type password, and now we should not get this anymore, but if I type something we will get buttons, whatever this is called. And now you see we got navigated to the next page. We have a token here. Also we logged this out, so we are in our service. And if we look in our local storage, you can see we have our valid JWT returned from the backend. So the next thing that we do is we go to our register page, our component, and can do the same. So we go into our, or we can first copy probably our SCSS, because this will be the same. And we can go with H1, or we can just copy this and go with register page. And then we can make our component first. So let's go into our register component and say we have our register form, and this is also from type form group. And here we will need our out service. So our authentication service, we need our form builder. So this we were not using in the login form or in the login component, but we use it here. So we have the form builder and we have our router. So we can navigate again if everything is success. So we can navigate to the login page after registration or whatever. So the first thing that we do, we want to initialize our register form. And for this we can use our form builder and group. And so this is just basically the same as before in the login form, but just a different syntax or a little bit shorter. So we can just say we initialize it here also with a null value, and then we use some validators. So we go for validators required. Then we have a username, and we will also go with null and validators required, so that this is always needed. Then we have our email, and we can go again for null, and we can say we have some validators here, required, email. We can go also for min length or something, min length 6. And then we can add after this our password property, where we go for null, and we can say also the required validator. We can go with min length, so the same as in our login page. And then, for example, what we could do, or what we are doing in the next video, we will make some custom validators. So we can say password contains number, for example. So we'll just comment this out, but this will be done in the next video. And then we will have a password confirm, because if you will always have to type the password 2 times, so that we are sure that the user is making the right password. And so we say this is required. And what we can do, or what you can do now, you can add a complete or another option to your form, and you could go for validators, validator. Well, I think we have to do this here and close this bracket here. Then you can go for validators, and for example we could use a custom validator here and say password matches, but this will also be done in the next video. And then you can just compare basically the password to the password confirm, and if they are not the same, the form is invalid. So now we need our onSubmit method, and we can just go here with the same as before, if this register form. So you know we have some properties here, and if this is invalid, so if this is set to true, and this is always if something of these validators are not fulfilled, then we just spring out or hop out. So to see this, we can just console log this here a bit and say this register.form.value, and then we can go against our out service and use our register method. This is not here, we will do this in a second. And then we want to pass in our register.form.value, and we can pipe it and map the outcome. I think it's user or whatever we are getting there, but we can just go and navigate to the next page and can say navigate. And since we are now on register, we can navigate to the login page, because if the user registered successfully, he just want to log in then. And since this is an observable, we can go for subscribe. And now we have to implement this. So we go into our authentication service. And you can see here we have our login method, and now we want also to go with register. And here we can say we want as an importer user, and we will make another interface for it. So we go for export interface user, and the user will have the same as we have in the register component. So name, username, email, password. So we go for name, string, username, string, email, string, password, string, and password confirm string. So we can all make or use here the save operator. So we don't always need to specify every property. So I don't know, this is good, yeah, we can do this. And then we can go return, return this.http .post. We can, for the ease, go against or make type any. And now we want to go against our API and against our user's route. And then we can just paste in the user, pipe the outcome, and say we want to return our user. So let's see if everything is compiling. This looks fine. You can also just look in the front end in our register component, so there's no error. And now we can go into our HTML. So we have here our register page. And we can add some logic now to it. So as before, we have our form. And then we are having our form group. And this is our register form. Register form. And then we have our ng-submit method. So if we submit, we want to execute our onSubmit. And then we can go for our div. And we have here our class container, so that everything is centered. And then we have our first met form field, where we can have our input and our hint. So we have here our input, which is of type met input. So we use Angular material here. We will have a placeholder, which is the full name. So please type your full name. And we have a form control name, which will just be the name. And then we can go with our met hint to display something if nothing is specified or if there's an error. And as you remember, before we were getting to this property, if there are any errors with Register.Controls, then the property, so name. But what you can also do is you can go for register-form.get. You can type then here the property, so we want to get the name, and then you can just go for errors. Or later, if you make your own custom validator, you can go for has error and go for the name of the error. But right now we are just going for errors. And then we can, for example, say full name is required. So the next thing that we, or the next property that we have is our username. So we go for username, and the property or the placeholder is the username. We can say your username. We want to get the username if there are any errors, and we say username is required. And we can do again the same thing for our email. And we say your email, and we want to get the email, and we say email is required. And yeah, basically we are doing now just the same stuff over and over again. So now we have our password property, and we just say it's the password. We want to get the password if there are any errors. And as before in our password, there also we specify the type, so no one can read it. So the type is password. And then we can make our last field, so the password confirm. what we are nothing doing now with, but in the next video with our custom validators. And just say confirm your password, and then we can say password confirm is required, and this is password confirm. So the last thing that we need is our button. So we go for button. We want to use the same button as before, so we can go for matte flat button. We can say its color is the primary color, and it is disabled when our register form is not valid. So we could go for register-form.valid, or we can, so if it's false, or we should go for invalid. So there are always different ways, and the type is submit, and then we can just name it register. So this should basically do everything that we need, and we can just check if everything is working. So you see we have here all, if you type nothing in, then it's getting red. So let's just say my new name is something that we don't have till now. Let's call it Felix. The username is Felix1. Then we say Felix at Felix.de. We say password, and we hit register. Now you see we got navigated to our login page. And now when we go to our postman and we say we want to get all users, give it a short time, and we can look if the Felix user is there, and you see he is here. So we now can commit all our changes. And we can say V-07 added reactive forms for login and register page, and made a new method in our out service. So I will not commit this because I had to type or to tape this video 2 times, because the first time my sound got lost, and I already have this commits on the branch develop, so it's already there, but you can just download the repository and everything is there. So let's look at our story at the end. So we have here our login and register with reactive forms. So our acceptance criteria are all met. So we used Angular material and reactive forms, and we did this for register and for the login form. So we can move this to done. And then we can go, or we will just name this. So this will be the next video. So where we make custom validation or custom validators for our forms. So let's have a short look at video 8, and there we will deal with custom validators. So the first validator will be, we will compare our 2 passwords in our register component, and we check them if they are the same. And the second one is we want to check if our password contains a number. So we will just check or handle custom validators and not more. So this video will be coming in 2 days.